Study 120. Why luxury brands are signing World Cup players instead of the World Cup, Mbappé, Yama, and the necrophagy of the athlete persona, from the Objects of Affection collection, on the strategic migration from event to body, and what the discipline of the custodian's contract reveals about the athlete as a hollowed object. In the weeks before the 2026 FIFA World Cup, luxury brands made a decision that looks on the surface like enthusiasm and is in fact a withdrawal. They did not buy the tournament, they bought its players. This study reads the luxury brand athlete endorsement wave, Dior's signing of Kylian Mbappé, Louis Vuitton's Jude Bellingham, American Eagle's 5-year pact with Lamine Yamal, not as marketing but as ontology. The post-luxury conceptual functional art, post-luxury framework names what the trade press cannot, the conversion of the athlete's material singularity into a fungible dematerialized asset through speculative velocity. When a mason abandons the institution in order to colonize the body, it performs an aura transaction, a finite store of cultural capital, accumulated through years of irreproducible labor, drawn down to underwrite a brand's diffusion. This is the mechanism OAC has elsewhere called institutional necrophagy, the consumption of a living source of meaning to feed a system that no longer generates its own. The athlete becomes a hollowed object, the vacant throne. Begin with an absence. For the first time since Seiko assumed the role in 1978, the World Cup has opened without a luxury watchmaker as its official timekeeper. Hublot, which held the position for 16 years across 4 tournaments, quietly ended the partnership in December 2025. No replacement of equivalent rank was named. A micro-brand holds a lower licensing tier, more like merchandise than sponsorship. This is not a footnote, it is the whole argument in miniature. The most legible, most prestigious institutional sponsorship slot in global sport was left empty, not because no one could afford it, but because the institution is no longer where the value lies. The throne was abandoned on purpose. The question this study asks is where the brands went instead, and what they did when they got there. The throne was not lost. It was abandoned, because the institution is no longer where the aura lives. The aura now walks and signs, the migration from event to body. The data is unambiguous. According to Luxury Insight, partnerships between luxury brands and the sporting world rose from 19 in 2019 to 96 in 2025, a 5-fold increase in 6 years. But the raw count conceals the structural move. The trade press itself reports the inversion in plain language. Brands are no longer seeking the time-limited exposure of a competition, but rather a lasting association with athletes capable of generating content year-round. Read through speculative velocity. This is a flight toward liquidity. An event is a fixed, dated, bounded thing. 4 weeks, then it is archived. A player is a perpetual emission engine. Millions of daily interactions, a face that renders identically across European, American, African and Middle Eastern markets at once. In the logic of commodification of sports identity by fashion, the body outperforms the tournament not because it is more meaningful, but because it is more fungible, more easily converted, more continuously extractable. The migration from event to body is a migration from the illiquid to the liquid. 3 cases in the conversion consider the specific deals because PLCFA argues from objects rather than atmospheres. In June 2025, Jonathan Anderson, newly installed as the first single creative director of Dior womenswear, menswear and haute couture since Christian Dior himself, named Kylian Mbappé a house ambassador, framing him as the voice of a generation. At reported earnings of nearly $95 million a year, Mbappé offers an LVMH Maison simultaneous access to 4 continental markets and a clientele younger than luxury's traditional base. His Real Madrid teammate Jude Bellingham was already a Louis Vuitton ambassador. 2 bodies, 1 conglomerate, 1 diffusion strategy. In January 2026, American Eagle signed the 18-year-old Lamine Yamal to a historic 5-year deal, the brand's first multi-year ambassadorship, spanning campaigns and limited edition collaborations. The length is the tell. A 5-year contract with an 18-year-old is not an endorsement, it is a future's position on a persona, an attempt to lock in an athlete's personal brand speculative value before the market fully prices it. The Epic X CR7 watch collection co-brands a man's initials onto an object, the persona rendered literally as merchandise, the name itself made into a movement. Across all 3, the same operation. A finite human aura is drawn down to charge a commercial vessel. A 5-year contract on an 18-year-old is not an endorsement. It is a future's position on a body whose aura has not yet finished forming. The hollowed object, now human. OAC has tracked the hollowed object across the Ferrari Luce and the Porsche Sardou edition, objects whose meaning is evacuated while their shell is retained and sold. The athlete deal extends the category to the human persona. What is retained is the image, the face, the name, the highlight reel gesture. What is evacuated is the relation between that image and the irreproducible labor that earned it. This is the same operation OAC diagnosed in the new luxuries parasocial brands, where Kylie Jenner and others sold themselves as objects. The footballer arrives at the same destination by a different road, not selling the self, but having the self bought, the persona converted into a material host for a brand's narrative. A complete World Cup player endorsement analysis has to account for this evacuation, not just the deal's size. The custodian's contract and the athlete. What would the custodian's contract require instead? OAC's institutional framework holds that to take on a source of meaning is to accept a custodial mandate, stewardship rather than extraction, an obligation to return more than is drawn. A custodial relationship between a brand and an athlete would treat the persona as a singular to be protected, not a reserve to be mined. The discipline this implies is not anti-commercial. It is the difference between patronage and predation. A custodian's contract professional athletes could honor, underwriting the conditions of the labor, refusing the deals that accelerate a young persona past the velocity it can survive, would be a genuinely post-luxury arrangement. The 5-year option on an 18-year-old is its precise opposite. A speculative velocity play that prices the body before the person inside it has finished being made. What the World Cup confirms: OAC has now read the 2026 World Cup twice. In the Wyland mural study, the tournament was the occasion for the destruction of a permanent public artwork, an event that consumed the object. Here, the same tournament is the occasion for the consumption of the persona. The pattern is identical. A mega-event functions as an accelerant, a license to draw down stored value, civic, artistic, human, in the name of a 4-week spectacle. This is the through line connecting this study to the broken model thesis of the Pace Gallery collapse and to OAC's reading of Apple's WWDC 2026. A system out of internal heat turns to consumption. The only question is what it eats. In 2026, increasingly, the answer is people. Coda the brands did not fail to show up to the World Cup. They showed up precisely at the body rather than the event, because the body is where the still living aura was. That precision is the diagnosis. When the most sophisticated cultural institutions on Earth can no longer generate meaning from their own objects and must instead sign the persons who still carry it, the persons become objects. The custodian's contract offers the alternative, and the alternative is not abstinence but discipline, to steward a singular rather than spend it. Until that discipline arrives, every signing is a small necrophagy, and the athlete admired, enriched and quietly hollowed is the object of affection the system loves most and protects least. Authored by Christopher Banks, anthropologist of luxury, critical theorist and founder. Objects of Affection Collection, Office of Critical Theory and Curatorial Strategy, 469 Fashion Avenue, 12th floor, New York, NY 10018. Related OAC studies on the mechanism of consumption. Institutional necrophagy. How speculative velocity destroys object permanence. The cost of the broken model. Pace Gallery layoffs and the exhaustion of speculative velocity on aura and its transfer. The aura transaction. On Louis Vuitton's Supernature, the zero-sum aura. Why digital immortality requires a material host. On the hollowed object, the hollowed prancing horse. What the Ferrari Luce actually confirms. What the Porsche Sardou edition actually confirms on the self-sold as object, the new luxury. How Kylie Jenner, Selena Gomez, and Jacob Elordi perfected the parasocial brand on the 2026 World Cup, as accelerant Wylands destroyed Dallas Whale mural. What the FIFA World Cup lawsuit reveals on institutional stewardship, the custodian's contract. From institutional critique to systemic stewardship.